is CNN Breaking News.
The attack on Syria has many political agendas at play. So joining me now to examine a few of them are political analysts Michael Genovese and Peter Mathews in Los Angeles. Appreciate you both being with us this evening. I think if we could just start with something I'd like to unpack. When the President said earlier that the combined American, British and French response to these atrocities will integrate all instruments of our national power, military, economic and diplomatic. Matthew, maybe if we could start with you. What do you make of that? What else is in the President's arsenal?
Well, I think if this is a one-off, and if it's just something that makes you feel good, get some immediate gratification, then I think the response will be underwhelming and the impact will be underwhelming. If it is a coordinated effort that's not just for today, but is for tomorrow and beyond, then that might have a deterrent effect. And by that we mean having more sanctions and having more military pressure. But remember, we're in a box. We're in a box because of Russia. The presence of Russia limits our ability to move, limits our ability in what we can do. And so maybe what we can expect is that this is a symbolic act, it's a statement, but it's not going to have a tremendous impact. After all, let's face it, the Syrians and Assad have gone through an incredible amount. Today's efforts, it's just a brush up of his hair. I mean, they've gone through much worse. And so militarily, it was a good statement, but it's not going to have a great impact.
And Peter, let's talk about the impact that it has on Trump's domestic audience. What do you think the appetite for the American people is in terms of military intervention in Syria and a continued or sustained approach?
I think it differs. I mean, with the Trump supporters, they think, well, finally the president could show his muscle and be the strong leader that he was. On the other hand, many Americans are not convinced that this was the right way to go. And whether or not President Trump could have waited a few more days, because don't forget, the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons was due to start their inspections a few hours later, just after the strike. The strike occurred just a few hours before. They were supposed to inspect to see whether the Syrian government was actually responsible for this attack, the chemical attack, or not. And I think the president did that and took attention away from some of the problems he was facing back home as well, with the Michael Cohen situation going on. So it depends on which particular group of Americans you're talking to. Overall, Americans don't want to be involved in another Middle East war, that's for sure. And they're willing to stand up for human rights to a certain extent, but they don't want an intervention where the U.S. are going to be sending more troops there. We already have 2,000 troops there. So they're very cautious about it, most Americans. But the Trump supporters are gung-ho about certain things, including what happened with the president's actions today.
Michael, this response, it seems to be generally considered to be fairly proportionate, about double the size of the last response to an alleged chemical attack in Syria. President Trump was leading with some quite belligerent rhetoric earlier in the week. Do you think that he's being moderated by other forces, potentially the Secretary of State for Defense? What do you make of that?
Well, you heard the president, in typical fashion, oversell the case. And then you saw Mattis and Dunford, the general in charge, basically saying this is a one-off, this is it, we're not going to go further. And so you've got either confusion within the ranks, or you've got the president using typical bluster, whereas Mattis and others are saying, no, we're going to keep this under control. And so that's the conflict. The chaos in the White House extends beyond just the day-to-day salacious scandals. It also extends all the way through defense policy. And with Peter, if I go back to you on this, so of course there's a political imperative for Donald Trump to intervene to establish a firm red line when it comes to the use of chemical weapons, and that's something that France and the UK also want to get behind. But clearly this is all tangled up with the war in Syria. That presents the backdrop, that violence, that instability to the alleged attack. Do you think that there is any political imperative for Donald Trump to devise a more coherent strategy on Syria? I mean, do you think that he's going to make any moves on actually trying to change the regime of Assad there?
I don't know about regime change, but I tell you one thing, he needs to be more coherent in all of his foreign policy. I'm afraid the president is kind of hodgepodge. He goes off in different directions, as was pointed out by Michael, and there's no coordination between him, some of his top generals, or even the Secretary of State, for example, when Tillerson was around. Such disjointed action on the part of the president and words is very dangerous, and it's very unpredictable. and it can cause, at the worst, it could bring about a certain war that we would never want to have. And I'm not really sure the president can really come up with a coherent strategy, because I'm not sure he's really interested in that fully or capable of it. And especially what's going on right now in his own personal life and being investigated, and this whole thing with the Cohen situation. And I tell you, we're not in a very good situation right now in terms of leadership. And maybe we'll get through this crisis today that happened today and that occurred right now unscathed or somewhat not scathed. But the United States of America has a leader that's unpredictable right now, and we have to really hope for the best, because I'm not sure he can really handle other crises that come in a stable, proper direction, comprehensive way.
Peter, Michael, thank you very much for being with us and sharing your thoughts.
Thank you.